I'm really starting to believe that the most dangerous thing on the planet is the psychological dynamics that we see happening in Collargate. And you will think, oh my God, these people are ignoring the reality of the situation. They're ignoring the reality of the situation. They see a different reality. And this is the problem with the world today, is we are all living in our own realities. There's no attempt at understanding. It's only about winning. So I think Collargate is a great example of a lot of very interesting psychological dynamics that are at play in the world today. And I'm going to talk about Collargate from the perspective of those psychological dynamics, not the individuals involved or anything like that. It's not about like demonizing Hassan or defending Hassan or anything like that. It's not about the specifics of Collargate. It's about, don't you guys think it's weird that this one thing happened, and then for the last 2 weeks, this is the only thing that anyone on LSF is talking about? Like, what on earth is happening on the internet and in our lives where this is happening? That's what we're going to talk about. Some time ago, I don't know if you guys have been following, there's a creator named Hassan, and he had this video.
Okay, it's the same reason as to why America... Kaya, please just fucking go. Just stop.
Right. So this is the clip that started Collargate. Hassan's streaming. He gets frustrated with his dog, apparently touches a button. His dog yelps and goes back to the bed or whatever. And the first thing that I want y'all to notice is that this has 78,000 upvotes. So like, what on earth is going on here? So today, what I want to talk about, I want to talk about Collargate, not in the details. And let me just this is about understanding what is happening to us on the internet. And the reason that I want to talk about this, so generally speaking, we have this ethos here at Healthy Gamer that we talk to people, we don't talk about people. So this is not going to be about Hassan and whether he's guilty or whether he's a narcissist or whether it's real. I'm not an investigative journalist. It's not my place to try to determine truth of something. What I want to focus on today is why this blows up and the way in which it blows up. Because, and this is what's kind of wild, I'm really starting to believe that the most dangerous thing on the planet is the psychological dynamics that we see happening in Collargate. And we're going to be talking about mentalization. We're going to be talking about online radicalization, and we're going to be talking about a host of psychological things, including displacement, projection, etc. And I think Collargate is also a really good example of how people have stopped talking to each other. So if we look at the fundamental structure of Collargate, what is it? It's some clip gets shown, right? A lot of people make judgments based on the clip. This is a 37-second clip that causes this explosion. There's no context. There's unclear levels of critical thinking. And then what happens is everyone starts reacting to it, right? So we've got the original Hassan Gate and then Collargate. And then we've got clips like this one, right? So then we have people analyzing this, people like XQC.
Trained with that and of zapping. And which was, they moved away from the initial conversation, which was that she didn't even have that collar on to begin with.
Then what the fuck is it wearing then? Okay, then I got to be honest with you. The only way to get out of this new lie, which is honestly already disproven, find this collar then in the room. You're gonna have to show.
Right. So there's all this business about the collar. Oh yeah, and then there's clips like this one. Okay.
Out of it.
Where then people are defending Hassan.
It's only a vibrate. There's a setting for vibrate and there's a setting for shock. No, there's no shock. The electric prongs are taken out of it.
But here's my thing, right?
It's only a vibrate. There's a setting for vibrate and there's a setting for shock.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
So there's only since the prongs are in it, it'll only vibrate.
Right. So whether there a collar, is there a collar, or the setting, are the prongs removed, are they not removed? So there's a lot of people talking across each other. And the reason that I'm talking about this is because this is not the only place this is happening. If we look at the world we live in, the amount of people talking across each other is increasing exponentially. And I'm really starting to believe that that is one of the core reasons why we are seeing so much strife and conflict in the world. So if you look at politics, we don't have places where people sit down and actually have a conversation. Even in politics, we have these debates where it's you get 3 minutes, with a 90-second rebuttal and 3 minutes with a 90-second rebuttal. We have all kinds of people who are no longer talking to each other, right? They're talking to their base. I'm talking to my base over here. You're talking to your base over there. And we're just talking across each other. And so it's sort of like there's no direct like dialogue. And so we've got like, you can look at things like Gaza and stuff like that. I'm not an expert in it by any means, and maybe it's a can of worms just to even mention it. But like, I think one of the things that I also saw with like this whole Ethan Klein Hassan thing, right, is like they fucking make videos about each other. I don't know if they just don't sit down and have a conversation. Maybe they did, and we'll talk about ignorance in a second. So I'm really ignorant. There's another huge problem. No one says I don't know anymore. Right? Like no one's like, I'm not sure what happened. So when we see clips on the internet, these clips activate our emotions. And when our emotions get activated, whatever thoughts get produced by our brain, we believe are true. Right? So I want to show y'all something because this is actually super scary. So then we've got these kind of memes of like Hassan being fucking Raiden and like shocking Ludwig, and Hassan, this is Cutie holding this, but there's one of like, Hassan like having Ludwig on a leash and things like that. So I want y'all to think for a moment, and I'm curious what y'all think. When you see a meme like this, what do you think happens in your brain? What do you think is the effect of this in your brain from a neuroscience standpoint? Okay, this is not like, do you guys like it or not? This is like, what is happening in your brain? Okay, so this is what's really scary, right? Everyone's like, lol, fair enough. Well, I enjoy a good meme. Here's the crazy thing. When you get emotionally engaged with something, either you start to believe it more or you believe it less. There's no in between. So like when people see these kinds of memes, it literally shapes your thinking.
Hey y'all, if you're interested in applying some of the principles that we share to actually create change in your life, check out Dr. K's Guide to Mental Health.
And so we start by understanding what literally is meditation. How does experience shape us as human beings? How do we strengthen the mind itself as an organ? And so by understanding our mind, we understand a very, very simple tool, a crucial tool that we have to learn how to use if we want to build the life that we want to.
So check out the link in the bio and start your journey today.
There's just a ton of science behind this, that the more emotional we get, it doesn't matter what kind of emotion. Like imagine for a moment that I'm like, hi, my name is blah, 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 and I swear I didn't do anything and I'm innocent. And then if you listen to that person, right? Like you're like, oh yeah, I don't know if I believe that person. A really great example of this is like Johnny Depp in his Amber Heard trial. If you guys watch clips of Johnny Depp, he's like hilarious on the stand. And if you think about the psychological impact that has on your brain, if someone is funny and entertaining, you are more likely to believe them. That's like a fact, yo. Like a fact. So I think we do not realize that when we watch things like this actually shapes our thinking, whether you realize it or not. And this is what's really insane. So I'm going to ask y'all a question that's really hard to answer, which is when you believe something about Collargate, what is that based on, right? And we think it's based on evidence, but there's a really, really good chance that it's based on emotion. And I'm not saying that there isn't evidence that is supportive or not supportive. We'll kind of get to that in a second. Okay. But like, I want y'all to really, really understand this, that the thoughts that your mind produces are not like super logical necessarily. Like you have to work really hard to have like a logical thought. And this is what we see on the internet. We know there are tons of studies on online radicalization. The more time you spend in a particular bubble, the more your thoughts will be shaped in that bubble. I've had patients, it's fucking terrifying. So I had one friend of mine, not a patient, whose wife started going down this like Instagram girl power, like toxic femininity, like misandry, like rabbit hole. And then like their marriage completely fell apart. I've also had friends whose patients, usually actually not friends, whose like husbands or boyfriends will start to go down the toxic manosphere rabbit hole. So as we talk across each other, as we stay in our insular communities, as there's a lack of dialogue, we're seeing in the political space where like, here in the United States, like people don't answer questions anymore. This has been going on for a long time. I know everyone loves to shit on Trump about how he's doing this and he's doing this. Like we stopped answering questions. Politicians stopped answering questions in the United States a very long time ago, right? So we don't talk to each other. And as we don't talk to each other, as we don't really sit and listen to each other, as we consume this online content, we get radicalized into two areas. Then we get to the stands and the aggressors. Now we're going to talk about mentalization. Okay, so this is going to be really challenging. Okay, it's going to be so fucking simple, but it's going to be really challenging. Now, here's the interesting thing. When I make this video, at the end of this video, there's a really, really, really good chance, actually not even at the end, already there's a good chance that if you're a pro-Hassan person, you dislike what I'm saying. If you're an anti-Hassan person, you dislike what I'm saying. By the end of this video, there's a really, really good chance that people on both sides of the conflict will really, really dislike me, okay? And we're going to understand why right here and right now. Let's say you're Hassan. And let's say for a moment that you are not abusive to your dog. Let's just assume this for a moment, okay? So Hassan loves Kaya, which is not mutually exclusive with abuse, by the way, which we can talk about if y'all want to, but is kind, does not use shock collar. Let's just assume for a moment. Now, the first thing that I want y'all to do is notice your reaction to this. So here's what I've learned. Here at Healthy Gamer, we've worked with over 500 creators. I'm a creator myself. And one of the craziest things that we encounter time and time and time again is like once the internet starts to believe something, first of all, how little information they have, right? And let's understand like why this happens. So a week ago, if I upload a clip of Hassan being nice to his dog, what do y'all think happens to that clip? This gets fucking downvoted through the roof, okay? Now let's understand why. So what does the internet love more than anything else? This is a separate point. The first thing that the internet loves is a delta, is a change. So why is Collargate such a big deal? It's because Hassan is not known as an animal abuser, right? So Hassan's like platform is about minorities. It's about supporting the people who are like, you know, he's like a leftist. Like, so he's like, you know, people, we got to like look out for the underdogs and we got to take care of everybody. And like, the people in power, the bad guys. I may be misrepresenting it. I apologize if I am. I'm trying to just summarize and move on because I'm not so interested in the platform. But what the internet loves more than anything else is a delta. So anytime you have someone who's perceived as good, who does something bad, the internet is going to love it. And anytime you have someone who's bad, who does something good, the internet is going to pay attention, right? And that's just the way that our brain works. We like novelty, and any kind of change is important. So I'm going to show y'all a paper real quick. The effective adaptation on differential brightness discrimination. This paper is great. It's from 1938, y'all. Journal of Physiology. Like back when there was just a Journal of Physiology. Not like cardiac physiology, not like kidney physiology. Like basically, this paper talks about how human beings are more sensitive to changes. So like basically this paper is looking at the eye, okay? And it basically says like, look, when the eye is used to seeing darkness and it sees light, it like notices a lot more. So there's this really interesting principle in human beings where like basically if there's some kind of change, that's something we're really sensitive to. So if I'm in a relationship with someone and they suddenly stop responding to my texts, I'm going to be hypersensitive to that. If like there's a very, very loud room where like everyone's like laughing and like hanging out and whatever, and suddenly things go silent, I'm very sensitive to that. So human beings, our brains are wired to be sensitive to change, okay? But let's get back to this other Hassan thing. So here's the sequence, okay? So let's assume for a moment that Hassan does not use a shock collar. He uses a vibrating collar, that he loves his dog, okay? That he treats his dog well. Let's assume that this is true. Now, he says his story is it's not a shock collar, it's a vibrating collar, it's part of her training, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, what happens is that there's two groups, one that believes this and one that disbelieves this. Now, once you form a judgment, this is the really scary thing. So then everyone gets upset about this clip and people form opinions. And then what happens, you know, there's this clip. Now we're in an interesting situation because if you're close to Hassan and you know the guy and you know that like this is true, right? Like I've seen Hassan, I'm not just basing things on a 37-second clip from the internet. I've known this guy for years. He's a friend of mine. I see the way that he treats Kaya. People like Ray showed up and they're like, this is the most loved dog in the world, right? And so they're saying things like this. So then what happens is like his friends, right? Like people like defend him. And it's not even clear. Like, I don't think that they're necessarily like defending him. I think they're just saying, hey, people on the internet who watched a 37-second clip, we know this guy. We've spent hours, days with him and his dogs He is not like this. This is a poor representation. Now, here's the really important thing. So when a human being does something, there are reasons they do something. There are psychological drivers. There are emotional drivers that lead to the behavior. So mentalization is the process of understanding when a human being does something, what are the psychological drivers that are actually driving them? And then even within ourselves, when I do this thing, why do I do this thing, right? What is psychologically driving me to engage in this behavior? This is something that we become so fucking decrepit at. Like, we suck at this. And I'll give you all an illustrative example. Okay, so let's say I'm someone who has a very high level of insecurity. I'm somewhat narcissistic, and I'm getting married. And then my BFF, who I haven't seen in 2 years, shows up a month before the wedding for her bridesmaid fitting. And I've noticed, oh crap, she has lost so much weight and she looks so great. And in the meantime, I've been in a steady relationship for the last 5 years. I've let myself go a little bit. A few years ago when we were in college, she used to be a little bit overweight and I was like a regular weight. And now she's really kind of gotten her shit together. And like, I've kind of let myself go and then I feel bad, right? Our positions have reversed. And so if I'm not careful, what I will do is I'll say, oh my God, she lost weight to make me look bad. And then I start coming up with all of these excuses for her to no longer be a bridesmaid. But if I do not have insight into these driving factors, like it doesn't make sense, right? So, and this is where there's a failure of mentalization, because this person in this situation, I don't think for a moment about why would this person lose weight. I don't consider that they have all kinds of reasons outside of what my mind automatically produces, that there are actions and then there are reasons for those actions. But my mind produces some hypothesis like, oh, she's trying to make me look bad, which by the way is emotional. Remember that, right? But there are all kinds of reasons why people could be doing this. And what I see in Collargate is a whole scale failure of mentalization. Okay. And we're going to explain that. I'm going to walk y'all through it. So let's go back here. Yo, this isn't true, friends of Hassan, right? Now, here's the scary thing. When we have these clips of people saying this is what's crazy. There are the people who believe Hassan, who are like, yes, right? They look at this, and based on their mentalization, they sort of accept this. And then we have the people who are the disbelievers, okay? And the disbelievers look at this, in this very simple action, they don't think like, oh, these people actually have spent thousands of hours with Hassan and Kaya. Maybe they know more than we do, right? That's not what they think. What do they think, chat? Do you see how one action gets interpreted by two groups of people in a completely different way, right? And this is where we got to talk about something for a second. And if it sounds like I'm defending Hassan, I'm really not. Right? We're going to get to like all the people who criticize him and stuff in a second. But I just want y'all to know, like, so there is a perspective where it's like, okay, like I'm not abusive to my dog. But then let's think about Hassan's perspective. Let's just imagine for a fucking second that he is not abusive to his dog. What is he supposed to do? Okay? So then we get to these clips, right? So then a day later, Hassan shows the collar and he's like, look, here's the collar that I used.
Of the charging port. And the texture of the
okay, and then Lonerbox shows up and he's like, look, this looks like this model.
This one.
He examines it and he's like, basically, this is a shock collar. So this is what Lonerbox says. Now, remember, we're trying to mentalize here. So we're trying to put ourselves in Hassan's shoes, and we're assuming, because we don't really know, right? We weren't there. We don't know. If you think this is sufficient evidence to crack the case, that's totally fine. I'm not commenting on that. But my point is that, like, if you're Hassan and you're not using a shock collar, what are you supposed to do, right? Like, what action can you take? And this is what we've learned working with so many streamers, is that like when you get railroaded, like there's really not much you can do, because people are, even some of this stuff where people are like, okay, you know, people are coming out and quote unquote defending you, but someone saying, hey, this guy didn't do this, gets interpreted as like, oh my God, this guy is like, he's like bullying all these people into defending him. That could be true. I'm not saying it isn't, but I'm not saying it is. You'll see what I'm kind of getting at here is that there is one piece of evidence which, based on your narrative interpretation, gets like put into one area or the other area, right? So like someone coming out and actually saying, hey, this is not a shock collar. Like I hang out with the guy. I've seen it a bunch. He doesn't shock his dog. I'm with him all the time. And then the believers are going to say yes, and the disbelievers are going to say no. They're going to say he's whipped. So my point is not whether this is true or not true, okay? It's about the differential reactions based on the narrative that is already in our head. And now we get to a really, really scary issue, which is that if this is true, right? If you don't want to believe it, that's okay. Just listen to what I'm saying. Don't worry about this particular thing. If this is true and the disbelievers are discounting it, then what do we do? And this is what we see not just here. We see this in politics all the time, right? This piece of data does not fit with my narrative. Therefore, I'm going to say that this data is invalid. And once I say this data is invalid, how is anyone ever going to change their mind? Do y'all see what I'm saying here? This is like, I kid y'all not, this is why there is war, strife, and problems, political unrest, male-female dynamics. This is the problem. Like, this is the most dangerous thing on the planet. If I'm a dude alive today and I say, hey, I'm struggling, and people say, I am discounting that because you are privileged, that's why men have a super high suicide rate. If I'm a woman today and I'm saying, hey, it is not safe for me to walk around, and we say, oh, it's safe, and if you get raped, it's your fault, like, that's the problem. It is fundamentally, I'm not anti any of these views or anything. I'm not trying to take a side here. What I'm trying to point out, and this is why I'm talking about this in the first place, is like the biggest problem in the world today is when someone speaks up with something that is contrary to what we believe, we just discount it. We talk across each other. So we each of us, like, you know, I'm saying this is good. You're saying this is bad. And instead of like talking and discussing and understanding, I'm not understanding why you think it's bad. Wait, why do you think this is bad? Let me try to understand. You're not trying to understand. Wait, this is good? I'm confused. Instead, what we do is we talk to our base, and then we end up moving in this direction because we're not listening to each other at all. That's one scenario. But the other scenario is that Hassan uses, right? This is possible. It's a possibility, right? And there's like, you know, you have to make your own judgment on the evidence. Like this, like I watched this 51-second clip and I was like, damn, right? And then it's like, looks like Lonerbach cracked the case. Like even the framing of the video seems really, really like damning, okay? And then there's all kinds of other problems. Like one problem is like, and then there's this kind of contextual stuff, right? Where we see him doing things like this. So this builds a narrative of like he's just, you know, he seems to get mad at his dogs a lot. Like pulling a dog by the tail, big no-no. That's like part of their vertebra, if I remember correctly. I'm not a veterinarian, okay? I'm a psychiatrist. But like this is like looks really bad, right? So this is kind of scary stuff. And the way that he reacts to her in that clip where he's clearly frustrated with her, right? So there's really strong evidence, quote unquote, right? So there's historic evidence. Let's say I'm going to call it frustration or abuse. I don't know if this is how abusive this is. I don't know about the treatment of animals from a professional sense. So is this I think it scares me when I see that. I had 3 German Shepherds growing up. I would never do that to my German Shepherds, right? Like I wouldn't do that to a dog, but I don't know. Maybe it's okay. I don't know. I don't know, right? And if y'all know more about dogs and you want to form a judgment on that, that's totally fine. Then there's things like the loner box, okay? Who's like looking at the shock collar. And then we get to one of my favorites, all the mixed messages. So then what happens, and this is really where there's like narrative really creates real problems. So people are saying, okay, so Cutie said this. She said, oh my God, like it's had the shock collar prongs removed. Someone else is saying, oh my God, there were never shock collars. There was never prongs on there. Somebody else is saying this. Somebody else is saying this. And when people see mixed messages, they, once again, remember, there's a narrative interpretation based on what you already believe. So when 2 human beings offer different stories to a particular thing, your interpretation is that they're lying. Hate to break it to y'all. Could they be lying? Absolutely. But I think what's far more common is that human beings and people are like, oh, why didn't you just show the collar then and there? Right? People will say all of these things on the internet. They're like, why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do this? Okay, let me ask y'all something. When you're like doing your day job and something weird happens that you don't expect, and you're kind of frustrated, right? You're clearly not in a good mood, and then you kind of lash out, and then you're like, you don't think it's that big of a deal, right? So I don't think he thought it was that big of a deal. Like, do y'all know, like, when you make a mistake, do you immediately know? Or does like a day go by, 2 days go by, and you're like, oh shit, I should have said that. I should have done that. I didn't realize in that moment, like, I should have really done this. And my favorite example of this is when I was in school growing up, kids would make fun of me. And then like 36, they'd say, oh yeah, Alok is such a fucking loser. Like, go back home and play your Nintendo. Can't catch a ball, Butterfingers. And then I'd go back home, and 36 hours later, I'd be like, man, I've got the perfect comeback. So in that moment, like, we don't think properly. In fact, we think improperly when we're stressed, right? But when people see that, okay, he's showing the caller the next day, and like in that window, could it have been doctored? Absolutely. I'm not saying that it couldn't have been doctored. I'm not saying that he did. It is a shot caller, it isn't a shot caller. What I'm saying, and this is what's so hard for human beings, there is a differential diagnosis for a situation. See, when a patient comes into my office and I think one thing, the whole point of medical training is like, I think this is what happened, but I could be wrong. Like, I think you've got COVID, but maybe you've got cancer. Maybe it's an allergy. Maybe it's an autoimmune disease. So we are formally trained to think through multiple possibilities. This we do not see on the internet. Depending on what your narrative is, you jump to a conclusion, right? You just jump to a conclusion. So people say like, oh, there's mixed messages and people are lying. Like, no. So I want y'all to think about fucking the last time you and your roommates argued about the dishes. If I were to go and interview all through 3 roommates who did the most dishes, I'd get 3 different answers. Does that mean that people are lying and trying to do a cover up? No, people just have their own individual flawed memory, their perception of things. They're representing that. It doesn't mean that there's some kind of conspiracy or that people are lying or trying to cover up or anything like that. I think human beings sometimes, I know it sounds insane, human beings sometimes make contrary statements. Keep in mind that even though I'm saying all this stuff, I'm not commenting on whether Hassan used a shock collar or didn't use a shock collar. I have no idea. Okay, I don't know. I wasn't there, right? And so you're allowed to believe what you want to believe. If you think that all of this evidence against him, that, you know, people are saying this, and like the loner box video, like this is what the shock collar is, that he has this historic narrative of like being at least callous towards animals, if not abusive. I don't really know, right? So it doesn't look good. And that's when we get to another issue, which is selection bias, right? So when these things kind of happen, so I don't know if y'all, I once had a patient that got accused of not really sexual misconduct, but was like harassing one of the female employees. But the moment that happens, the whole narrative changes. The moment that happens, everyone is like, oh yeah, like they were such a creep. There was that one day in the break room where like, you know, they sat next to me and they like started sneezing, and then they like dropped their phone, and like maybe they were taking a picture of like what was under my skirt or something like that. Like the moment that there's a narrative that gets formed, we start populating all of these clips, right? So how many hours of material is there of Hassan interacting with Kaya? And are any of the positive things what's going to get upvoted is the most damning clips. Now, just because what's going to get upvoted is the most damning clips does not mean that those clips aren't true. Maybe that's true, right? I'm not saying it isn't true. What I'm saying is, like, remember, this is not about Hassan. This is about the world that we live in. What gets propagated? What gets upvoted to the top? The stuff that tends to fit our narrative. So I think this is a really good example of why we should mentalize more, right? Instead of just jumping to a conclusion, we should try to put ourselves in Hassan's shoes and ask yourself for a moment, if this was not a shock collar, what is he supposed to say, or what is he supposed to do? Let's assume he's innocent. Is there anything he could say would alleviate the suspicions of the people who think is there any option? And this is an interesting, I sometimes will have political discussions, like not often, but, you know, and one of the things that I will ask people, one of my favorite questions in politics, is what would have to happen for you to stop supporting this person, right? What would actually change your mind? And that's why the answer to that question is why I think politics is like has a serious problem. Because the truth of the matter is that very few things, like if you ask someone what would actually change your mind, you realize how far radicalized they become. That it would take something incredibly monumental once a narrative forms in your head. So if you're someone who hates Hassan, what would it take for you to like him? What would it take for you to think he's a good guy? And on the flip side, if you're a Hassan stan, what would it take for you to dislike him? See, this is something that you have to do ahead of time, because each step of the way it doesn't work. Like, because you'll rationalize if you're on a particular team, you'll rationalize away the behavior of that team one step at a time, and you'll end up, when you started at 0, you'll end up at like 100. You should really stop and ask yourself critically, for a belief that you have, for someone that you like, for someone that you dislike, what would it take for you to change your mind? We do not ask ourselves this question enough. Now, there's one other thing about mentalization that I want to talk about. This too, I mean, this is where there's like claims that Kaya didn't have the shocker during the incident. Like this, I mean, it's clear that she did. And this too is like, okay, and this is where I know that there's a differential diagnosis here. One is that he's mistaken, which, I mean, he's mistaken, I think. I think there's plenty of evidence of that. And maybe I'm wrong there. But the second is like, I can just attest to this, y'all. When people are under huge amounts of stress, their mind like thinks in a very black and white way, and they just sometimes make mistakes, right? So just because he's doing some mental gymnastics in his head, like a week into the shit when he's getting hammered, like just because he makes a mistake doesn't mean he was originally lying. I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to like support him here. I'm just saying I want y'all to think about when you're 1 week into a period of stress, is your mind producing thoughts that are 100% correct? Okay, so here's the other part about mentalization that I want to talk about, okay?
Right-wing figures are literally doing rapes, okay? They're doing rapes, and nothing matters. On the right, it don't matter. This isn't to say that, like, there shouldn't be a limit, you know what I mean? I'm just saying, be a little bit more, exercise a little bit more critical thought. Then be better yourself. Maybe have a dog and it not be a part of your persona if you don't want to fucking question when you're evasive. You're no different than the GOP. You're a 40-month subscriber and you think I'm like the grand old party because I won't just sit there and be like, you guys are right. I'm actually abusive to my dog. This is unironically what I was talking about. Like, please exercise a little bit of critical thinking, just a little bit. Just for like a second. And I think you will realize that maybe you're not behaving correctly about this. Because if you're a 40-month subscriber, you've been here long enough that you know this is ridiculous.
So here's where we're going to talk about critical thinking for a second. This is why it's so important to mentalize, okay? If a 40-month subscriber who's been around from the beginning thinks that this is sus, I think a huge opportunity for critical thinking is for you to take a step back and think about, how does this person arrive at this conclusion, right? And this goes back to like this diagram over here, which is like, if there's like a 40-month subscriber who's over here and doesn't think that what you're doing is like, okay, telling them to exercise critical thinking is fine. You can do that. But this is, I think, a great opportunity for critical thinking, because how is it that someone who has been here, right? The key question for me in this scenario is, how is it that this person who has been here for so long comes to this conclusion? Because they are ending up in one place and I am ending up in a different place. And Hassan talks about this a lot. He says, like, you know, the best way, I don't know how to fight against observable reality, right? So he'll say, like, I don't know how to fight against observable reality. And like, that's really, 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 really important to think about, because the whole point here is that the reality that you are observing is not the same as the reality that the other people are observing. And until you understand the reality that other people are observing, how do you know that your reality is more correct than their reality? And this is where the mind will come up with whatever answers. Hassan will say, well, I was there. Obviously, duh, right? But your mind is going to be plagued with cognitive bias as well. Your mind is going to look at things like this and say, like, you know, your mind is going to look at things like this and say, like, this is not a problem. This is a clip of someone who's telling him that, he's like choking his dog because the collar is too tight. His mind is going to look at something like this and it will very prone to dismiss it. People are leaving out the context. People are leaving out this. People aren't considering this. People don't see all the great stuff that I do for my dogs, right? So like, this is where I'm not trying to like zero in on him. I'm saying any human being will do this. The moment that you get defensive, right? So think about when y'all get criticized and you will think, oh my God, these people are ignoring the reality of the situation. They're ignoring the reality of the situation. They see a different reality. And this is the problem with the world today, is we are all living in our own realities. And how on earth can we coexist when we are living in different realities, right? So like anytime, like if someone has known you very well, and I see this all the time, let me just use a different example. So if someone knows you really well, and like, you know, I've had patients who have struggled with things like alcohol addiction, and then their friends come to them and they're like, hey man, I've known you for 40 months and this is not like you. This is a problem. And then my patient's response will be like, oh my God, you don't understand my situation. You're being judgmental. You're not looking at things clearly. Like, you don't understand what the reality of the situation is. That's their response. But when you're under attack, I want y'all to think about, when people attack you, do you think critically? Or is your default response, man, I wish they would think more critically? And this is what's happening right now, because we're talking across each other. We're not actually listening to each other. We're just like getting pissed at each other, blaming each other, and then like inviting the rest of the world to be less stupid, right? We're smart, you're dumb. And that is not working, y'all. It's just not working. This is why dialogue, as we've seen a decline in dialogue, we see more things like this, where it's shots fired, followed by defenses, followed by tribal thinking, followed by defense versus attack. Now it's us versus them. There's no like, hey, can we sit down and try to figure out what's like going on? How is this for you? Like, what, what's going on with you? Like, everyone feels this way. Like, what do you think about that? Like, there's no dialogue. And then we get to, I think, the weird stuff, okay? Now, this is where there's something weird in the air that is hard for me to describe. But I think there's a lot of projection. There's a lot of displacement. This 78K, like, this blows my mind. And Hassan is like, hey, there's a genocide going on, right? There's all kinds of problems in the world. And it's not just a genocide. There's like, American, like, rural hospitals in America are closing down. Like, there's still conflict in Israel and Palestine. There's a lot of like weird stuff happening in the US. There's war between Ukraine and Russia. There are problems in the EU. Was it not Indonesia? Which country was it? Nepal, maybe? Had like a revolution where they elected somebody on Discord. I'm forgetting which country it was. I think it was Nepal. And they fucking dragged their finance minister through the streets and like whipped him and stuff like that. Like, there's all kinds of stuff going on. And this is what we get really focused on, right? So for the people who are like hammering Hassan, why is it that it is so important to see that this guy is brought to justice about this issue? Do y'all get what I'm saying? Like, why is there such a intense desire to see this outcome resolved in a particular way? Do y'all get, like, that's a little bit weird? Like, what is our investment as a community in this? Are we suddenly like super pro animal rights, or like, what's going on here? Are we going to try to like protect why are we so invested in this? And this is where I think there's a lot of projection, there's a lot of displacement. I'm not quite sure what this is. I'd really have to sit down and talk to a lot of people to really understand what's going on. But this is what I feel. So this is the part that I think is like the sketchiest part of what I'm going to say. So what I detect is a lot of pent up resentment. And now that resentment is coming out. I would say that this reaction is disproportionate. And maybe I'm wrong there. Maybe I don't understand people's values and we're really pro animals or whatever. But I would say that this reaction is like disproportionate to the size of the thing, right? And I want to say, like, I'm going to just check in with chat for a second. Can we agree on that? Would y'all say that this is like, okay, because we hate hypocrites? Great. So for the people who are saying no, what are y'all saying? Why do y'all think this is not disproportionate? No, let's listen to the people. So people who say, let me understand. Because he always escapes. Okay, this is beautiful. Okay. Always escapes responsibility. What else? Oh, Jesus, I got to slow down. Maybe we're pro animals. Like, okay, right? So animal abuse, but there's like all kinds of animal abuse going on all the time, right? There's like all kinds of animal abuse going on all the time. What bothers us so much about this instance of animal abuse, more so than everything else? And I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying y'all are wrong. I'm genuinely trying to understand why, for the people who do not think this is disproportionate. Like, tell me why. Explain it to me. He can't keep getting away with it. Exposes his true colors. Then this is like related to hypocrisy. This is beautiful. Okay, so he's like deflecting, talking about rapes. Okay, gaslighting. Okay, this is great. Okay, so I didn't feel super confident in what I was about to say. Double standards. Okay, I didn't feel super confident in what I was going to say, but man, y'all just really helped me out. So I'm so grateful. Okay, this is so good. Okay, so remember when I said up here, there's pent up resentment. So I'm going to ask y'all a question. Are there people in today's world that escape responsibility? What do y'all think, chat? No accountability. Are we upset, right? Can y'all think of anyone who is escaping responsibility for their actions, right? Are we upset with them? Yeah. Okay. Are there people? Can we do anything about it? So I want y'all to think about someone who is escaping responsibility, and what can you do? Can y'all do anything about it? Okay. Right? So like some people are saying yes, some people are saying no, right? So there are people, and can we do anything about it? Not really. Maybe you can do something. I don't know, right? Are there people out there abusing animals? Can we do anything about it? Do we do anything about it? Not really. Are there people out there who keep getting away with it? Can we do anything about it? Not really. Do we know someone who we're waiting for them to expose their true colors? Or they're like people in your life that you know, like that you see on TV or you see on the internet? Are we like kind of, as a society, are we frustrated with people being fake? And can we expose them? Are there people around us that are very hypocritical? Say one thing, do something else. Can you do anything about it? Probably not. Are there people who deflect, who when they have some kind of problem, say, oh, but there's something, they're really good at whataboutism. They're like, stop looking at my problem. There's so many worse problems going over there. Absolutely. Are there people out there who are gaslighting us, and can we do a whole lot about it? Absolutely not. Oh, here's a good one. Are there people who have double standards? Does the world treat some people very well and some people treat very poorly, right? Does the CEO of Twitch, is he a fan of any particular political streamers? Is there a double standard? This is what's crazy. We don't really know. I know there's a perception of a double standard, but this is what's crazy. I know this is crazy, but hear me out. I've been on the receiving end of this. The prime example that I can think of is I once worked with a Dota 2 team, and man, working with that Dota 2 team and seeing how it runs on the inside and what the real problems were, and seeing what Reddit's understanding of what the problems were, they were like night and day. No one on Reddit had a fucking clue what was going on inside the team, but everyone is judging and everyone is sure that they're right. Does that make sense? That being in the room and knowing what is actually happening is very different from watching clips on the internet and believing you know what is happening. Are we sensitive to people who do not take responsibility? So here's what I think is happening. When human beings have all of this pent up stuff, there's so many things that we hate Hassan for. And that's fine. But here's the thing. The things that y'all are talking about, for those of y'all that are like really, really don't think that this is inappropriate, right? And I'm not saying that y'all are right or y'all are wrong. Remember, the goal of this is not to pass judgment. I'm not judge. I'm not jury. I'm not executioner. I'm not investigator. I think we as human beings need to understand what the fuck is going on in our society right now, because we are tearing each other apart. And I'm serious, y'all. This is not hyperbole. This could result in biological weapons. It could result in nuclear weapons. It could result in all kinds of problems. People, the world is fucking falling apart because of stuff like this. Because of the fundamental way that human beings have started interacting with each other, and because of a lack of the way that we've started, the way that we stopped interacting with each other. So we have all of this pent up emotional energy, and it's got nowhere to go. And so where does it end up? Someone shows up and holy shit, y'all, the evidence is good. Did you see him yank him by his tail? The loner box video, XQC is doing this. All these people are lying about it. He's got Ludwig on a leash. Like, oh my God, this guy, this fucking guy. Double standard, hypocrite, privileged, pretends to be pro-minority while he has $3 million houses and $300 shirts, right? A champion for the underprivileged. No accountability, gets to dodge bans all the time. Other people get banned for all kinds of stuff. And then now, like, it comes out onto him. And this guy is like, what the fuck did I do? I hit a button. And oh my God, I want y'all to think about this from Hassan's perspective. Let's think for a moment, like, holy shit, what is this disproportionate reaction? Because people can't get upset at anybody else. People can't tear down anybody else. So what do they do? They go for him. He's the one target. Because I know this sounds insane, y'all. I've worked with a bunch of creators. A creator's power is a house of cards. Is a fucking house of cards. And if public sentiment turns against you, there's very little resilience. There's no institution to prop you up. And it's terrifying. Like, this guy's like, what did I do? I hit a button. And by the way, it's not even illegal. People sell shock collars. You can use a shock collar. Hey, he talks about like the TENS, like I've had a TENS machine. It delivers, and by the way, he's correct here. TENS machines are things that are used to help people in physical therapy. They deliver an electrical shock that is way higher than a shock collar. But here's the key thing to remember. A TENS machine is used on muscle. The shock collar is not, okay? If I punch you in the throat and I punch you in the arm, the amount of pain you will experience will be very different. Do y'all get that? Just because the force is the same does not mean that the pain is the same. But do y'all get what I'm saying about this right here? That this is what's happening. We've got one guy, and when the mob gets angry, and it's angry at 15 people, and one person fitting the description of the other 14 show up, they tear him apart. Now, there are a couple of other complicating factors here, which I think really, there's a lot of pent up stuff, I think, that's specifically towards Hassan. So I know, for example, that, and I'm not saying this is true or not true, I'm just saying that with the creators that I've worked with, one of the things that there are a handful of communities that they're really scared of, and Hassan's is one of them. I'm not saying that that's justified or not justified. I'm not saying it's true or not true, but just for whatever reason, right? And when people say, I'll ask them like, why, right? What concerns you about? And I think it has something to do with his size, his rigidity, and the tribalism of his community, right? There's an us versus them. And so, another example of this, and I think this is why the Ethan Klein Hassan thing got so bad, because there's a lot of tribalism in both of those communities. There's not a whole lot of like dialogue or trying to understand or things like that, at least that I can perceive. And if that's incorrect, remember, I'm making these judgments based on very limited stuff. It's not like I watch these guys a whole lot. It's just with the parts of them that I do see, which there could be a selection bias for, there's there's not a whole lot of like, let's understand why the right is the way that it is. That's not usually what they say. Let's try to understand the perspectives of the Palestinians. Let's try to understand the perspectives of the Israelis. I haven't seen them talk about that. There is rigidity, there is tribalism, and there is righteousness. And so I think that when you add tribalism, rigidity, and righteousness, when you add that with clout, power, and size, this is what you see. And this is not just him. So I encourage y'all to think about communities, how open they are, how understanding they are, how convinced they are that they are right and somebody else is wrong, and how do those communities behave. Don't even think about LSF or the Twitch sphere or the streamer sphere or whatever. Think about other groups that you know. So why am I talking about this? Because I think like we need to understand that this is happening. We need to understand that this poor guy, he is getting just an explosion because we've got nowhere else to send it. And I'm not saying he's innocent. I'm not saying he's a good dude. I'm not saying he's a bad dude. Not my place to be judge, jury, or executioner. The reason I'm sharing this with y'all is because, like, we as a society need to understand these dynamics, because as long as this stuff keeps going, the world will literally keep moving in the direction that it's moving. It's about winning, not understanding, right? And this is where, like, I said something earlier that I think is, like, sometimes has gotten me in trouble, but I want y'all to really think about this. Like, why do people try to do genocide? It's because if I can wipe everybody out, then I win for sure. We've seen this historically. There's so many people that will try to ethnically cleanse. They're trying to wipe people out. There's no sense of understanding. That's the direction we are moving. Hell, we're already there. There are groups of people who are trying to systematically wipe out other groups of people. There's no attempt at understanding. It's only about winning. And as long as we are doing this will continue. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about is talking to people. So when we started streaming, or when I started streaming, we used to have these like really powerful conversations with people. And then what would happen is people would start pressuring other streamers to come and talk to us. And then we made a decision several years ago at Healthy Gamer that we were growing. We used to have 20 to 40,000 concurrents. Now we're sitting at a whopping like 1,500. Woot. We made a decision some time ago that the kind of audience that we were attracting was not there to get better. They were there for voyeurism. We're here to talk to people, to try to help people. We're not here to try to be a show for other people. This is not, the entertaining part is not someone else's struggles. The entertaining part is me doing accents. There have been many times where I've been tempted, and sometimes we'll reach out to people if they're going through shit. Tons of people reach out to us. We try to support them in the best way that we can. So I think dialogue is important, but this is where I want y'all to understand. I feel like I have to talk about this. Framing is really important. I struggled with something that I'm going to share with y'all. So when all this shit was going on, I struggled thinking about whether I should message Hassan or not. Be like, hey, dude, are you doing okay? Sounds like you're going through a ton of shit. I don't have a relationship with him, so if there's someone I have a relationship with them, I'll almost always try to DM them if they're going through something, try to be supportive as a friend. But then I was thinking about And this is what's so hard. So let's say I DM him. He says, no, dude, I'm good. And then I make this video. What's that like for him? Now Dr. K is like talking about me because I turned him down. Do y'all kind of get what I'm saying? It puts him in a weird position. And we usually, like, I'm open to having conversations on stream with people with things about this, but there's a certain ambulance chaser mentality to that I don't like. It's not really what we're doing, but that's really tricky. And then the other problem is now that I've had this conversation, I'm sure that people will show up in his chat. Hey, Dr. K's talking about you. Like, do you want to talk to Dr. K? Please, guys, don't do that. Do you guys realize, let's mentalize for a moment, what kind of position that puts him in? It puts him in a lose-lose situation. If he doesn't want to do it, right, it makes him look bad. And if he does do it, then it's really scary. It's really dangerous. Like y'all get what I'm saying? Like, this is where I think dialogue is important. Think for a moment about what his experience of this is going to be. Right. And I genuinely hope that nothing I said today will cause him or anybody else, Cutie Cinderella, Ludwig, Asmongold, XQC, like whatever. I don't wish anyone to troll on any of these people. I think, please, y'all, listen to what I'm saying here. This is not about them. This is like, look around. The world is fucking falling apart and we need to start having dialogues. So I'm sort of open to doing that in some way. It's kind of what I try to do, but I don't want to be like, okay, like Dr. K is saying, hey, like y'all should come and talk, right? Do you guys see how manipulative that is? That's not what I'm saying. So I'm trying to sort of not do that, but also say that, hey, we need to start talking to each other. That I firmly believe, right? Because I'm really not trying to call anyone. I don't think that is good, right? To be like, oh, like, hey, like, do you want to come talk? And if they say no, oh yeah, fucking, he didn't want to talk. And then like, we don't want to put him in an unfair position or anybody else for that matter. And at the same time, I want to signal to y'all that this work needs to be done. And if this work needs to be done, I am somewhat willing to do it because I don't know what it looks like. There's so many other considerations. We need to start talking to each other like that. I believe more than anything else on the planet. Like, this absolutely needs to happen. And this particular instance doesn't need to happen with this particular person about this particular thing because there's so much crap loaded into this. Because I want y'all to think for a moment. Let us mentalize. If Hassan and I have a conversation and he says anything, this happened with fucking poor Thor. I had a conversation with Thor and I think the guy really tried to understand. He showed up with the right intention. I showed up with the right intention. I even asked y'all, please don't clip it and ship it. What happened? It got clipped and shipped. We took the worst parts of the conversation and they blew to the top of the LSF. Yay, Dr. K's back at the top of LSF, showing narcissists how they're such assholes. This world that I know you guys love, oh my God, love to blame Hassan, love to blame all these hypocrites and everyone escaping responsibility and everyone who deflects. Do y'all take accountability for your part in this? And this is where people I'd be like, yeah, fuck yeah. Fucking deserves it, bro. I wish I could have done more. Right? But what I want y'all to really understand is that in a relationship, which this is a parasocial relationship, there is the way that I behave and there is the way that y'all behave. What gets created between us has contributions from both sides, right? And like, I think especially with like just talking about Thor for a second. So I know that everyone like loves to burn him and things like that. But the number of people that like, we got so much positive feedback. They're like, oh, I'm like this too. Can you please help me change because it's fucking up my relationships, right? And I'm not saying that he's bad or anything like that. It's like, we do this to try to help people, not to try to tear people down. And unless we start talking to each other, and if we keep talking across each other and having these like, you know, literally like, I'm going to react to this and I'm going to react to this. I saw the title of the stream and I was like, oh my God, I'm doing it too. Talk about hypocrisy. Here I am. Stop talking about people. Stop talking across people. Right. And maybe this is me trying to not be hypocritical. This is me trying to notice, hey, like I'm part of the problem too. I'm a streamer too. I do it too. Like, I'm not perfect in this by any means. Today may fuck up people's lives in ways that I really don't intend. And I really do think that it's over, y'all, so which is why I'm kind of talking about it now. But like, it's just such a good example of what is wrong on the internet. If all criticism of things online can be just dismissed and boiled down to your own pent-up anger and resentment, how is any accountability ever in anything? So this is important to understand. Great question. So if I'm like, Hassan did nothing wrong. It is your pent-up resentment that is displaced onto him and he is great, right? How will there ever be accountability? Here's what I'm saying. I know it's wild. How about We give the appropriate amount of accountability to the people who deserve it. So does Dazan deserve accountability? Absolutely. Should we hold him accountable? Absolutely. Should we hold me accountable? Absolutely. All I'm saying is when there is this pent-up resentment and displacement, and I'm betting y'all money that you have been on the receiving end of this. I've seen this so much when you're the black sheep of the family, when you're the person who people don't like at work, when you are a racial minority and you get a displaced amount of hatred. How does that feel? So I'm not advocating for an absence of accountability at all. What I'm saying is let us have an appropriate amount of accountability for people and what they did. I have too much hope for people. Yeah. So here's the last thing I'm going to say. I think most people do the best that they know how to do. They do the best. Honestly, most people kind of do the best that they can. And sometimes that's pretty bad. But I think that, like, you know, when I've worked with people who are streamers, there's a certain narcissism that is like a necessary developmental piece that comes with streaming. So I don't know if this kind of makes sense, but see, when you get criticized by one person, it hurts. When you are a gigantic streamer and you get criticized by 10,000 people, 100,000 people, your brain doesn't view that criticism probabilistically. That's not how our brain works. Our brain doesn't do a calculation of, okay, 99% of people like me, 1% of people hate me. It just looks at the 1% of people that hates you, or the 10,000 people who hate you, or the 100,000 people who hate you, and that's very psychologically traumatic. It's not a percentage. That's just our brain is bad at probability. There's all kinds of studies about this. You can look at things like the Monty Hall problem and things like that. It's why human beings play the lottery, and it's why human beings gamble, because we suck at probabilistic thinking. And so when you're a streamer, it requires, right? Because some people are going to hate you no matter what. And how do you protect your psyche from people who hate you no matter what? There's a series of defense mechanisms that we'll use. The narcissistic defense mechanism is one of the biggest ones, right? Because I can't receive that person's opinion, because if I receive that person's opinion and the 9,000 other people with them, like, I won't be able to wake up tomorrow morning. So I have to deflect. Is it healthy? It's adaptive. I don't think it's the healthiest thing that you can do. Does it cause problems? Does it create sort of narcissistic patterns of thought? Absolutely. Are those bad? Absolutely. Do those kinds of patterns of thought encourage people to avoid accountability, to be a little bit gaslighty towards themselves and the people around them? Absolutely. But it's a feature of the profession. That's my honest belief. There's other details and nuances there that we can kind of go into.
Hey y'all, hope you enjoyed today's video. We talk about a bunch of topics like this on the channel, so be sure to subscribe for more. If you're already subscribed, GG, and we'll see you in chat.